I know all about those 11 p.m. organizing sessions. Ones where you swear you're going to get everything organized and under control, but it's midnight and all you've done is scroll through all your different folders. That isn't a discipline problem. There's a real reason these nighttime sessions don't stick, and today I'm handing it to you. Let me walk through it with you because I know exactly how this one goes. You sit down at your computer and you open a folder, and immediately you don't know where to even begin. So then you open another folder just to see what all's in there. And then you find something that you forgot about. A vendor email that's still unanswered. A budget document that stops back in March when you last updated it. 6 versions of the same schedule, and you genuinely can't tell which one is actually the most current one. And every single one of those is a small verdict to you. So now you're no longer just organizing things. You're now just sitting there feeling bad while your laptop is open. You rename 3 files, you move some things around, you make a new folder, and somewhere in there you create a new document called Event Final version 2, which is sitting right next to the one called Event Final. And then it's midnight and nothing has been closed, and you tell yourself, this is going to be better next time. So here's what actually happened that night. You sat down to get organized, and getting organized isn't a task you can finish. Let's compare it to a real task, like sending the caterer your final numbers. You know the exact moment that that one is done. The email has been sent. Now try to get your event under control. When is that done? What folder is the last folder? What does finished even look like? You can't answer that. Nobody really can. So no matter how hard you work, there was really never a point in the night where you could stop and truly call it a win. The night was rigged before you even opened your laptop. You were sorting a pile, and sorting arranges a pile, but it doesn't really shrink it. Now, part of what makes that night difficult is not knowing what's handled and what still needs to be worked on. And if you want that picture without you, I made something for it. It's called the Event Pulse Check. It's free and it only takes about 5 minutes to tell you where things stand and where things could use a little more improvement. The link's down below whenever you're ready for it. Okay, now I want to tell you about a different kind of late night because I've had plenty of those too, and they went completely differently. I ran retreats and global conferences for most of my career. And there's one kind of night I remember specifically. It was me, my manager, and one of the IT all together in a hotel workroom past midnight. We were still waiting on approvals and some decisions to be made, like room requirements, setups, presentations, all of it. My manager was working on the room assignments with our production team, going over floor plans and layouts based off what the sessions needed and how many people were going to be in the room. And once those decisions were finalized, they then came to me because I then had to get them into the registration system so that they would appear on the app. That way, in the morning when all of our attendees woke up, they would be able to easily see which rooms their sessions were in that day. Nobody in that room chose to be there past midnight. The work showed up when it showed up in that case. And trust me, I am someone who likes logging off at a reasonable hour and getting a good night's sleep. So being in a conference room at midnight is not my idea of fun. But compare how those 2 nights ended. Ours ended because the job was done. The presentations were uploaded and the room assignments had been added to the app, and we were then free to go to bed. Whereas your organizing sessions end after midnight because you've just run out of steam. The work didn't finish, you were just done, out of energy, over it, whichever came first. And that's the difference. Our night was long and it counted because every one of us walked in there with a job in front of us from the very beginning. We knew exactly what done looked like, and we worked until we got there. And I did the same thing on the weekends. And yes, I did that on purpose. I would often look at the week coming up ahead and see what all was coming at me. And then I'd take a Saturday or Sunday and turn that laptop on and immediately turn that messaging app off so that nobody could see that I was online. And yes, I was hiding from my coworkers, and I know, and I'm sure you know, and you've done the same thing too. But that was the only way I was going to be able to get a stretch of time without anybody interrupting me to get some work done. And I wasn't organizing. I was going through my different tasks one by one. The registration, the emails, the details that people had sent me, and catching whatever didn't line up. Then I'd write all my emails so they were ready to go first thing on Monday. Because again, they didn't need to know I was online over the weekend. And those emails would include like, here's what I found, here's what's not matching, what do we have to do to reconcile this so that we can all be on the same page. But every single one of those sessions ended with something that was finished. And I wasn't more disciplined on Saturday than you were working at 11 p.m. at night. All I did was just sit down with a goal in mind instead of something vague. So that's the whole thing really, and it's smaller than you think. The late nights that work have a job attached to them. The ones that don't are the ones where you just sat down with the intention of fixing everything. And unfortunately, that just doesn't work. Getting organized isn't a task, not like sending your caterer their numbers. There's no email that ends it, no box that gets checked, no last folder. And it took me years to really notice that. But on a professional team, nobody gets handled the task of get organized. You get handed something with a name, an owner, and a date. The rooming list, the final guarantee, the load-in details. That composure that you're seeing planners have at a well-run event comes from that. Everybody is working on some kind of assignment. And those 11 p.m. sessions are just handing you an intention, which is why you can work a whole evening, and I mean genuinely work it, but at the end of it, stand up and realize that you have completed absolutely nothing. The hour was never too short. The assignment that you tried to fit into that hour was just way too big. And there's one more thing that is also happening on those nights. Open-ended organizing walks you straight back to those things that you've been trying to avoid. So now those sessions are costing you energy before it gives you anything back. And then you quit earlier each time you try. And anybody would tap out after an hour of looking at all their unfinished work, especially if it's late at night. So here's what I would do instead if it was just an ordinary evening. 1, pick the thing that you know that somebody's going to ask you for next. Not the biggest thing on your list, but the next one. The thing on the other end of it with the person who is coming at you next week. Sometimes that might just be answering the questions like, what time do we arrive? What's the parking situation? And sometimes it's an actual task like that catering count that they're waiting for. The room details that your assistant needs before she can proceed with her next set of tasks. And number 2 is you're going to take it all the way to done. If it's a task, finish it and send it. If it's information, write it down somewhere where people are actually going to look and find it. Somewhere that your team or your guests can access it without needing to ask you. 3, stop on that one thing. And that's it. One thing handled. Close the laptop. Or if that one thing took only about 10 minutes and you've still got energy, you can pick the next one in the exact same way you picked the first one. What you don't do is go back to just scrolling through your folders just to see what's in there, because that drift is that 11 p.m. session trying to sneak back in there. Just choose one thing at a time and decide before you touch it. And I know that one thing might sound too small, but that is exactly why it works. You gave the work a finish line and you'll know when it's done, because the person who is waiting on it now has the whatever it is that they need. And whatever you are working on stops following you because it's been handled. A question that lives only with you gets asked again and again and again, but one that is written down doesn't. Do that 4 times, whether that's 4 evenings or 2, and then those 4 things that your event needed are pretty much done. Your team starts finding answers without having to come to you, And organizing turns out to be something that happens along the way, rather than something that you have to sit down to do. Now, I did say pick this thing that somebody's going to ask for next. And I want to be specific here because sometimes the next thing isn't always the most obvious. The one you want has somebody actually waiting for it on the other end, not the one that's been bothering you the longest. Those are usually the ones that are big and vague, and big and vague is what got you here on the late night working sessions to begin with. So here's how I'd find it. 3 places to look. First, your inbox. Somebody is bound to have emailed you with something that you haven't fully answered yet. Probably more than one person, actually. And that's the easiest one to spot because there's already sitting there and it actually has a name attached to it. Second, anything with a deadline attached to somebody else's calendar. Your caterer's guarantee date. Your venue's rooming list deadline. The day their team needs all your rooms set up so that they can begin planning out their layouts. Those have dates on them, which makes them next by definition. Third, the thing that you explain multiple times out loud to someone else. If you've said it 3 times, you're bound to say it 3rd. That's the cheapest hour you'll ever spend. And one thing to keep in mind about where you put the answer, it needs to be somewhere that the person receiving it would think to look, which is sometimes not always where you would think to put it. Your team looks in whatever document they already open. Your guests look at whatever you last sent them. So the answer goes there instead of a beautiful brand new document that nobody even knows exists. Now, the first time you do this, the chances are you're going to pick something that is bigger than just a singular task. And that usually means you picked a stack that looks like it's wearing just one name. Say you do decide to go with the caterer count. You sit down and you realize that you can't send it just yet because 4 people still haven't replied and 2 dietary requirements came in last week that you still haven't confirmed. That's not one task, that's 3 jobs carrying the same name. So you break it at the first place that it depends on somebody else. Tonight's item now becomes the chase. One message that goes out to those 4 people with a reply by date. Another to those confirming the dietary requirements. And then another to the caterer just confirming when you will send that information to them. All of those can be finished tonight. And when it comes down to actually giving the number over to that is a much shorter project and task on a different night. And yes, that still counts as done. Done means it is off your plate and onto the right person's with a date attached. An item you're waiting on is finished work. An item you keep reminding yourself you need to ask about, that's the thing that's keeping you awake at night. Here's what I actually want for you. The evening starts counting. You sit down, you do the work, and then you get up and something has closed. And that time was worth spending. Your files stop being evidence of things undone and go back to being storage. And the 11 p.m. sessions retire because your regular hours are doing the work for you now. You've been able to do this whole time. Your work just needed an actual finish line. Now, underneath those midnight sessions, there's still usually another belief that this is just what it costs to run an event, that hosting at this level is supposed to feel like this, and the stress is just a price of the admission. That belief deserves its own conversation, and it's on your screen right now. I'll see you there.